Hello everyone, welcome to Closers Coffee. I'm your host, Carlos Figuerella. On this episode of Closers, we're talking with the CEO and president of Dawson Racing. Dawson Racing has over 60 years of championship pedigree, competing in Le Mans and currently in the IMSA series. We sit down with Ian and Simon to discuss the business of racing. We highlight some of their world-renowned partnerships and discuss what they envision is the future for esports racing. This Closers episode is sponsored by Outfield. Outfield is an industry-leading CRM for sales and marketing organizations across the globe. Outfield helps teams optimize their sales process, gamify their productivity, and increase revenue. Download the Outfield app now and use the promo code CLOSERS for 10% off. Welcome everyone. Super excited to have Ian and Simon Dawson, CEO, president, and welcome. Super excited to have you.
Thanks for having us. That's great. Good
Yeah.
to be here.
For those that don't know, competing here in North America in the IMSA racing series, doing some great things with some partnerships. But this all really started back in 1970. Was that correct?
I actually started racing with a company in 1971. Yeah.
71. Wow. And so 1971, the Euro racing scene had to be quite mad. Tell us a little bit about how that started.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think the opportunity, at the time I was doing an apprenticeship, an engineering apprenticeship, and there was a racing team there, and I thought, okay, that looks pretty cool, I'll go and do that. So I went into the company and I was involved in, at the time I was learning to be a designer and in actually heavy commercial vehicles. But wow. I was effectively a fabricator, training as a fabricator, sheet metal worker. So started to work on race cars, and it instantly became clear that it was something that really excited me. And I probably learned the hard way when I was asked by the owner, which was a Ford company, that I ever go to a racetrack? And I said, no, I mean, I've been to look at a race, so do you want to go? Yeah, okay, yeah, that sounds good. Those words still resonate today, because immediately we worked a 24-hour shift, worked the weekend in the cold and the rain, and drove back. But the funny thing is, I still remember the windshield wipers on the truck with, and 4 hours later I was back in a drawing office, you know, and I thought, you know, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that was the start of it, yeah. And so I do remember, yeah, clearly, by going into it in a way by accident rather than thinking of it as a career path. Wow.
Kind of give us a high-level overview of some of the accomplishments while your time in racing.
Yeah, I've probably got a longer list of things I wish I shouldn't have done, but you know, that's the challenge. I think when you go to events like Le Mans, you know, people think, oh, it's great. I mean, just finishing is an achievement in itself. Sure. Like many businesses, you know, it's a team of people. It's how you manage a group of people, how you're involved in a group of people, and you need one weak link in it, and usually that will cost you the race. I've been fortunate to finish the event 12 of those times, which has been great. Wow. You know, fortunate to have won a class there a couple of times, you know, and some of the best ones were the runs to a non-finish, you know, perhaps early in the morning, or we had one with Porsche where we had 1 hour to go. And we were on the podium, and, you know, we had quite a big fire, which, you know, cost the whole event. But, you know, so those highs and lows, I think, what you've got to take inside, and you've got to try and work with them. Yeah. So Le Mans is one. I mean, running in Formula One with Lotus was a huge challenge at the time in the 70s. Extremely risky business, very dangerous. We always joke it was often more dangerous off track than on track in the 70s. But you know, you survive it. Today is a much more clinical world. You know, you have to be far more alert about what you're doing. And I think you were mentioning earlier, it's the fine detail often, but it's also the big picture. You know, if you haven't got the big picture, you can't do it, and therefore, and also you must refine the attention to detail. So, you know, being in race winning situations, it was always a fantastic thing to be involved in. But I often say it's not the individual, it's the team. And that's what we're trying to bring back some of that old thinking today. Definitely. It's not all about me, it's about us.
Simon, talk to us a little bit about your athletic background and how that journey went for you.
Yeah, no, it's I think it was my parents' effort to keep me out of motorsport, which ended up being the driving force to get into it. You know, you can't do, I will do. But I'm tremendously appreciative of going to some great schools where I was able to get into a lot of different sports. A little different in the UK to America. You know, you can play a lot of different sports there. There's a season for every sport. So we had athletics, then we had rugby, and we had football or soccer. But yeah, I really enjoyed rugby, really enjoyed athletics, and then they didn't do tennis so much at the school, but I went out and played tennis and ended up getting quite good at that, and you know, getting ranked in the county and the country and then world ranking and stuff like that, and it just kept going. But I was always wondering, where's he go off to? You know, what's up with this motorsport? And you know, and I always remember, I think it was 13th or 14th birthday, this go-kart arrived, you know, with bits of other race cars, Formula One cars and Le Mans cars, and I'm like, all right, let's learn to drive, right? And boom, racing, right? And you know, you're watching it on TV at a high level, and there he is on TV, and then to have the stories when they came back, to learn more about what really was going on, and then to sit in like the driver lounges and listen to the drivers, listen to the engineers, listen to the sponsors, listen to, like, just take all this information in. It was amazing because it just feeds you, right? It's just Definitely. It's just intoxic. So you know, I really enjoyed that. But it's kind of like every weekend, you would come up with something different. You'd think of something different, like, hey, what about this? What about that? You know. But yeah, it was awesome.
Jumping into how the D3 Racing team, you know, the brand came together. How did you know that you had that feeling? You knew that this was the family business.
What I was always conscious of was that it hurt your family. I mean, I've been married for 42 years, and you know, my wife is like many guys. My wife's been fantastic. You know, she supported my madness in what I do and suffered and had some good times through it. But and still, you're the guy that can walk out the door and not sure what day you're coming back.
Yeah.
And you have to have a huge trust in that. But I think for me, then it was how. At a point, I don't know which point it was, you realize that how do you do this with your family? I mean, as Simon said, he was fortunate. We traveled sometimes as a family, although I did a lot of racing. That's my job. I'm away and I'm working.
Sure.
But you then have to look at how you do that. So we had a couple of points where Simon came into work and learned the trade a little bit, as I say, and I think he has an aptitude for communications with people. So marketing, in my head, seemed a pretty good place to go, rather than try and actually get involved in, you know, some of the day-to-day nightmares of running a race team. And I think that's probably a good place for Simon to pick up a little bit how that started. But I never ran as our own brand. I never ran under my name. It was always something else, and sure. I never saw it as you're more of a backroom person, but actually getting pushed to the front. And I think it was a natural thing in the end, a few years ago, to say let's try and do something together. And I think that comes from always being away a lot. One minute you got a 3-year-old, and the next minute you got a 30-year-old. So, you know, you think, wow. And I do have a ringing in my ear of a guy called Eddie Dennis at Lotus telling me, be careful in how you move through this, because it can wreck your family. That always stuck in my head.
What makes a successful race team?
Two things. If you're the CEO, respect the janitor. You know, that's what I think is attitude and understanding and respect of things that perhaps today have disappeared a little bit. And I think, again, it's a philosophy of what we're trying to do. So we try and bring everybody at every level into the thinking about where are we going, what are we doing, why are we doing it, and how do we deliver content back to the investor who's invested in it. So we go back to the money side of it, you know. So that's the world that, you know, we're trying to find. It's a tricky one. There's no question that what we're doing here in the thinking here that Simon and I have, is slightly challenging. It's a little bit opposite to where the world is today, because the world is more about, let's grab what we've got today and let's not worry about tomorrow. We're sort of trying to worry a little bit about tomorrow. I mean, Simon's son, Dylan, you know, my grandson, he's going to walk into a very difficult world today. And as he grows, you know, we've got to try and look after that. And I think that's really encouraging of what we're starting to see now, is there's people becoming a lot more aware of what we're doing. And in my world, we're not a bunch of guys running around racing cars, spending a load of money, you know, polluting the atmosphere. You know, we've got to think about this. We've got to think about, what do we do? What's the message? And the message is branding. So hence, you know, what Simon spends 90% of his day on, and that's how do we marry that brand awareness to the engineering, to the team, and how do we bring a lot of people together?
And I think just to cap that is, it's really just getting a balance between all the components of a business, whether it's on track or off track, and also making sure that what you're doing is good for you, but it also reaches those that are sitting at home now watching it, or the privileged few that can kind of go and watch it on a track, you know. And I think that's the big thing, is making sure there's respect for everybody and everybody's roles, and and also understanding how hard it is to get to a track, because a lot of people just kind of go, you know, we call them weekend warriors, you know, they kind of go, yeah, I want to go to a race team this weekend, I'll help you with you know, this, that, and the other. They kind of come in and come out, and they're actually sometimes the ones that really appreciate the opportunity, but you just need to respect everybody's roles, and that will make a good start for a real successful program.
Because even in the D3 Racing name, right, there's family associated with that.
Yeah, we like Ian said earlier, it's we've never raced really with under our name, because it's always about team. You know, it's about other people, it's about the brands we represent, it's about the people that work with us. But when we thought about a logo to kind of hide our name to it, we really thought about, you know, it's 3 pillars, right? You know, we wanted it's a strong shape. You got, you know, all of these different things. Then we thought, well, there's this generation, and then my little fella. You know? So I think that's kind of how we wanted that to bring together and try and marry an experience with the virtual world and a real world. So there's your 3 pillars, and that's, you know, that's kind of how we sort of came about it. And it was actually one of the gentlemen that used to work at Hasbro that designed the logo, which was really great because it resonated with kind of the audience that we're wanting to go to, you know. Sure. So yeah, but it's every little step's life's about the journey, not the destination, right? Although when you get there, it's cool.
And then you know, you do go back onto the, you know, we mentioned it before. I mean, Hasbro is a lot of people have not understood the 2-year partnership we've had with Hasbro. And I mean, from what we've seen, is an incredibly moral company, and it's surprising when you look at the size of them. And our working relationship with them has just grown. And often, you know, we perhaps not been perceived as the traditional way of racing team. You know, we've made a couple of launches, and we've tested the water, and we've come back out, and we've looked at what we needed to do, and we reevaluated and gone away and had to think about it. And here we are, 2 years in, and face, you know, the world's largest crisis, really. And I think it's actually made the relationship stronger. We've had to reevaluate what we're doing, as they have, as a huge company. And I think we've learned a lot from it, but I think there's also been a respect from a very small company with family values to a huge company, which seems to have some family values. So I think from that side of it, we've got the package reasonably good. So we're very excited about the fact now that we can engage people who would perhaps normally not get engaged. As we see in spectators in all types of sports, going to be limited how they get there, having often the money and the funding to get involved, that you can, through the virtual platform today, people can feel they're really part of something.
Really quick for our audience out there, you guys participate in the IMSA racing series. Could you give us a quick overview of what is IMSA, and, you know, for those that don't know much, share a little bit about those details.
So IMSA's and it was basically to bring a lot of people who are doing their own thing together under a club. So it was managed, and I actually came and ran IMSA races in 1981 from the UK. with a car that we'd built and designed, and we were commuting. Did a deal with a company called Flying Tigers. It was an ex bunch of guys that came out of Vietnam flying freight about out of London, and I did a deal with them. Actually, we got free space and we sold space to somebody else. But so the business is always about how it's entrepreneurial, about how you do that, But the perception is, how the hell are these guys flying in and out of England? Well, I was actually selling space to other people, but actually twice travelled in the front where there was 8 seats, and you loaded the stuff yourself and got on, and so a lot of things from an IMSA point of view, they attracted people from around the world, and today IMSA's owned by the NASCAR series, so it's a much bigger demographics, very well run, one of the best championship runs I think in the world, very well respected. It runs sports cars, which, as Simon said earlier, I mean, sports cars still one of the fastest growing demographics in the world. The type of car we race can race in all continents, so we can go to Asia, we can go to Europe, we can go to Australia. We race predominantly through IMSA in North America, and we do events, around the whole US and go to Canada.
What all goes into the actual event production for race day? Pretty
much turn up.
Yeah.
The actors on the stage. IMSA would come in and prior would negotiate with all the tracks and pick the venues that we would race at. And a lot of that is pretty tricky because they're obviously negotiating with other championships around the world to make sure there's no conflict, because some drivers and some teams will do multiple different championships and multiple different countries. So that's quite a bit of a logistics thing. When it comes to race days, once the calendar's in place, you get given, here's your schedule. This is when trucks park up. This is when trucks come in. This is when team can come in. This is when you can practice, qualify, right? It's all there, and you just kind of fit along. There's a lot to do. I mean, you've got to check the pit equipment, so all the officials come through, make sure the fuel rig's safe, and all of this stuff. And then they let the fans in, and then they can sort of go, oh, this looks cool. It's all set up.
So it's like music business as well. When you look back at it, how does a band arrives at a venue and everything's set up and its roadies are already there in advance and everything's setting everything up. And I think in racing today, you've got planning, you've got guests, you've got companies who their names are on the car, they've invested in it, they have product awareness programs. So you might do a pre-event somewhere where you're taking the car, you might do something, so I mean, Simon and our roles, where he might be doing something away from the track, probably for 3 days before he even gets there. Wow. I might be, there early because we've got groups of people setting everything up. So, but the great thing is with IMSA, like many other series, they're all working together. They're planning the Asian Le Mans series, the American Le Mans series, the European Le Mans series, and they're all making sure that nothing clashes, because some of the drivers and also some of the teams would run a multiple series. I mean, although we focused this year on the American Le Mans through IMSA, we will probably be entering into some European or Asian events next year. Now, again, from my point of view, I mean, I've raced worldwide. I mean, logistics, moving cars about, moving equipment about, that's just normal. But today you have to make sure often that it doesn't matter where you are, you have to have the same equipment, you have the same methodology in how you do it, and you looking after the same way of doing it. So it's repeatability. In a craziness, you have to have repeatability and a bit of norm. Otherwise, you can't succeed at it. So very, very important that all of those elements come together. The press releases, the press room works. Our press officer, Barbara, who does, although she's based in Atlanta, today, as everybody's learned, I mean, I think Zoom's probably one of the fastest growing companies in the last 3 months, I see, because everybody's learning to communicate separately. So treating that side of it is very, very important. So the engineering parts become very much an in-house thing, although much the same as we've seen with our gaming platform, is that it's much easier today to work away from work sometimes than it is to work at work. But I think what you do lose a little bit is this word team bonding, this ability to have a lot of people fly in, and build that whole working relationship and put that together. That's still vital, I think, in any country. And I do see that. I think it's easy for people to say, let's all work remotely. I think gradually some of that remoteness will come back. It has to, because you've got to do things, you know, and people will still want to actually touch, feel, and see. You know, it's about they're going to say, oh, you know, I got to do that. I need to get involved. So, you know, so we're trying to bridge a bit of that a little bit better. I think that's what.
Definitely. In terms of championship pedigree, just give our audience a little bit of an insight around the racing industry. We see the flashiness, right, of the business, but what are some of, you know, operational costs? What are some of the things behind the scenes that really make the business of racing?
I don't think anything's changed. If I go back over the years, I mean, it's like most businesses. It's driven by cash flow. You know, money. Gotcha. Money drives it, and you can be sensible with money. You can be wasteful with money. You can achieve success without a lot of it, but you're very lucky because you have to plan. So planning is the big thing. You've got massive elements. I mean, if you have to go out sports, I mean, I did cross-country running, so as an individual. Simon's was in tennis as an individual, but I've spent my life in a team environment. So now we rely on a lot of people. You know, if you're looking at today's world of a Formula One team requiring, you know, 300 million to operate, you know, it's a corporation. You know, when I was in Formula One, say with Lotus, I think in the 70s, you know, a team winning, championship winning operation, again with Mario Andretti, you know, was last American to win a world championship. You know, 3 years later, Lotus, you know, fell into decline, and the Formula One team went bankrupt. But today it's an iconic company that people have forgotten a little bit about. You've got huge Formula One teams funded by, you know, clever marketing. It's not so much about the car sales. Ferrari are doing it through Fiat, through selling cars. You've got a company, McLaren. I mean, what is McLaren? McLaren's built by a passion of one individual. Bruce McLaren, you know, decided to build his own car. And here we are today. McLaren is a huge corporate business, but probably struggling, like many of them, to survive. So you've got to be very shrewd on the financial side of it. You've got to get the right people. You must have the right message, and you have to deliver it. And if you can get all of the things together, you've got a crack at winning a championship and winning individual races. So marketing and selling is extremely important to work in parallel with engineering. So this is where I think if we go back to the family values, each department must trust each other very carefully. And so I think Simon can bring you up to speed a little bit about, I think, where we've got ourselves, where is the vision? How do we find the budgets to go racing? You can do it from an individual's wealth driving the car, which is an area I've tended to not want to get involved in, although have done. Or you look at it as a commercial business that delivers brand awareness.
Sort of nail in a little bit on what type of racing you want to do, and looking at where the journey goes, you can really start to look at which brands best suit different things. And I think, you know, yes, we've never really gone down the sort of wealthy driver route to kind of have fun for a weekend. It's always been commercially driven. And I think that's, you know, when we really came together and it was like, right, let's do something with family. We need a family brand. So then we started to look at the brands that would kind of resonate with the message we're trying to, and back it up a little bit. So that's when we started wandering into toy companies and cereal companies and all this sort of stuff, right? I think that is tremendously rewarding because the team gets behind that, because when they go back home and they're with their family, if it's a brand that's in the home and it's something that's come from where they're working, that makes Sunday roast dinners quite enjoyable, right?
Like you said, the partnerships, all of the things that go into those elements, because ultimately, at the end of the day, the race is won a handful of people are remembered, but that experience is lifelong.
Yeah.
People take that.
So then you've got to you then run back into there's nothing wrong. The world's full of people who've been successful and they choose a sport they want to do, and motorsport is an extremely adrenaline pumping series. So
Absolutely.
you know why lots of people do it, and there's a huge audience base who would like to do it. So we can jump into why esports today has become so good. It's different to a shoot-up type game, and it's morally more family orientated. But then you've got to look at education. Why do you race as a business? So you start to then look at the reason of what Dawson Racing is and what D3 Esports has become and D3 Racing is, and what future technologies are going to be. So as a small company, you go back to the technology innovator.
Yes.
And the technology innovator is very often what we call the squirreling world of the large company who can rapidly produce something. Some things work, some things don't. And so motorsport fits in exactly that space. So it gets involved in R&D, research and development funding. And also what we've seen in the modern world today, which is where we are, is how you bring in that awareness from a company that spends advertising dollars on engineering. So now we've got all these segments starting to develop on the way through. So it's not just, let's go race into a racetrack. Sometimes when you arrive there, it's a pure relief that you're there, because the work that we're doing in the background is very complicated very often, because you're trying to marry together a lot of different disciplines. But hence, this is the challenge of the team. This is the team. We're not buying really often today a kit car and all going racing. We're trying to develop what used to be around is how do you make something? And of course, for instance, in our partnership at the moment with Hasbro as a toy company, it's quite synonymous for things from shoot-up games also to girls, to toys, to all types of things. But how do we develop a technology toy, for instance? Okay, how do we innovate a technology toy? How do we sell a technology to, and how do we make that work? So now you go back into brand awareness again, which is now, as Simon and I will try and work together, throw ideas around and think, how do we bring these things together? So that's how we work that level, and that's how all large racing teams and medium teams work. They're working all of those different elements together.
Yeah, no, excited to see the team back out there. We'll be rooting for you. And so we talk about IMSA, but now I'm really excited to talk about some of your partnerships and talk about, you've mentioned Hasbro. You guys have a great partnership with Hasbro. Talk about that and share a little bit more about the Transformer brand and how that all came about.
A chance meeting in Austin with a very old colleague that I had who knew somebody, and he said, well, why are you guys doing this? Why aren't you in the big racing? I mean, what's happened? Well, we haven't done it. Hey, you need to get back in. Anyway, he spoke to a guy at Hasbro, but at the same time, Simon was talking to Dylan, his son, and about, we're going to do this and do that. And we're talking about Lego. I think you would go on to this. And he said, no, you need to get into Hasbro, into Transformers. So
he was playing with one on the floor, and he says, no, Dad, you've done Lego, do Transformers. So we just went through our database. So do we know someone at Hasbro? And we knew the guy that was designed for G.I. Joe. And we said, hey, mate, can you get us a meeting? Literally a week later, we were up there. A race car that you saw today was in a truck up there, and we drove it to Hasbro, and they left the space open, parked it up. We're all outside having a chit chat, and we went in there, and it was literally a boardroom full of people, and they said, why should we do this? And we said, well, I particularly, and like most, have been dragged to races my whole life. But if we pick the right brands and work with the right brands, well, the kids will be dragging the parents. Right, and they were like, love it. Let's see how we can do this, right? So that's kind of how the Hasbro thing started. And like Ian said earlier, now they got a little bit of wind of the esports stuff and the kind of I guess, how determined we are to succeed in multiple different ways and reach as big an audience as possible. And I think, when we launched the Transformer livery, which will ultimately be a new toy. That went to more people than we'd ever seen interact with any branding we'd ever done. So we're like, interesting, because you've reached a bigger audience. So then when we started getting into the other branding relationships we've got together, and all of these things, you decide on something, you try and get it, you close it, right, next one. And all it does is just start creating this web so that you can reach as many people as possible, to even relationships like with our wearable technology partners. They all have a band. Everybody gets access now, don't have to have tickets flapping around, yet it builds the points up so they can win more things, links to gaming. It's all of these things. It's tremendously complicated, but they just happen. They should just happen.
Part of the experience.
Part of the experience. That's it. It's part of the experience.
Definitely. Yeah. And as growing up, Transformers, that was the toy.
90% global penetration, I think they tell us at Hasbro, and we're like, that's amazing.
And I think it was. They used the word, not us at the beginning. It actually ended up a special arrangement. I have to say that, having been in a lot of big meetings in my life, the meetings Simon and I had with them, we did adjust what we went in there with. Yeah. And I think still people say, well, how did you get a relationship with them? Well, it's private how we've done it. It's a different way. But I think when we look back on it, it was family values, as I said at the beginning. We didn't know at the time when we said what we said, but actually it did resonate. Mm-hmm. And it was something very different to how they'd been pitched by other people in the past. And I think...
Well, we weren't pitching, we're coming from the heart.
We were coming from a different way, and that's why I use the word pitch, because we didn't actually go in there, which traditionally, as you say, as businesses, people go in there with a pretty hard sell, and here we were going in with this quite, in a way, a softened down way of doing it. But it's actually been the nucleus to how, and the platform of how we've worked ever since. Mm-hmm. And I think, as Simon said a little while ago, we did this press launch, and we got how many million people?
82.5.
Yeah, 82.5 million hits.
Wow.
Well, you had to sit back and think, and in my old world, you think, well, where did that come from? Where did that come from? Well, it came from people, not the traditional way of, we've got 100,000 people in a grandstand, or that doesn't make any sense. It came from a completely different route. So right at that point, we said to each other, well, we need to look at something. This came from online. Well, I'm still the guy that, raced in Formula One with no mobile phone, no computer, nothing. Yeah, I am engineering computer literate, and in everything else. But so you adjust. But here was the light bulb on, and this was 2 years ago. We need to get into this esports, whatever, or sport online. So that became, I think, your life for the next year of really understanding how that worked. But as we've seen, that's a moving target, and we've been a moving target ever since. But in the end, you have to make it happen. In Funny Worlds, we're a lean company that's small, able to adjust, reaction, not monstrous overheads, and it's allowed us to actually keep looking at another part of how our business works, which here we are today, three things coming back together. So we have three businesses, D3, all arriving back with the same journey focus. And that focus is sustainability, families, everything else going into it. So, I'm very pleased where we are. We've just got to go now.
Well, you're visionary, right?
He's visionary, right? Yeah.
And now it's all in house. So it's about doing it right, doing it with the right values and
the right partners. I mean, finding the right partners today is, I think, is a challenging thing. Is to find the right-minded thinking people, because a lot of people think you're slightly crazy in what you're doing, but visionary is a thing. And then another group, but the general investor doesn't want to take the risk. They want to see it happen. Of course, what we're going to see in the next month is it is going to happen. And I think you can't wait for that. That is the moment of truth. Yeah. At what level? I don't know. But, the main thing is it's an enjoyable level. It's quite complicated in many ways, but the guys have got a good handle on it. I think everybody that's in our system has really risen to the challenge, and I think that's enjoyable to see.
I think the big thing as well is that the real race car, the Transformer, it has to tell a story, and you can't just whack a brand on there that doesn't fit in line with it. So, you know, there's companies in there that are talking about sustainable materials. There's a cybersecurity company in there, which even they were trying to promote, you know, all these new businesses and what they're doing with conferences, and of course everything then stops and they're like, oh geez, now what? Well, then you start creating, well, why don't we do something with STEM, our STEM partnership, where you can help people get jobs in the 3.5 million jobs that are created in the cybersecurity space in America alone. Wow. So, you know, you just kind of evolve this. So when people look at that, they're like, wow, that's cool. It's telling a story. But yeah, the esports bit, which I know we get to, I mean, it's kind of the last little glue, right, of what we're doing, and who knows where it's going to go, right?
Absolutely. No, I think, and I'm excited to get there. And so talking about partnerships, the last one, this is really the one I'm excited to talk about, the Audrain Concourse. Talk to us about, you know, your experience there. Simon, you and I were chatting kind of while you were headed down there, and then we connected afterwards, and I was just blown away. I never heard of this. You know, I assumed I knew a little bit about cars, but this is essentially the Super Bowl of cars. Tell us more about the Audrain Concourse.
That was a big eye-opener for us, for sure, like when we were on the phone. And, you know, we met them a couple of months, if not a year prior to that, and heard a little bit about them looking at setting up a new concours, which that was the first year they'd ever done it. The location's perfect, you know, in Newport, Rhode Island. Audrain obviously has a great automobile museum as well. Great demographic in there, beautiful time of the year, all the rest of it. We first loved the idea of the museum because we were thinking education. Then when we thought of the concours, we thought, great, bunch of people showcasing their cars. Obviously, we've run many of our cars over the years up the hill at Goodwood in England, so the Festival of Speed. Yep. You know, many, many years old, that one. And then you've got Pebble Beach and Amelia Island and all these different ones that are in the States. But we really like the idea of this to support it. But they also, I mean, all right, it's based at the Tennis Hall of Fame as well. So I got motorsport and tennis. So,
love it.
So we were like, yeah, let's do this one, family trip. But yeah, we took 2 simulators up for them. They'd purchased 2 simulators. I'd kind of got them on the idea of, well, wouldn't it be cool to people coming into the museum to be able to drive these different cars? And they're like, they can do that. So we showed it, we delivered 2. And then we let them know a little bit about our esports platform, and that, you know, they could obviously pick the guys then coming through, guys, girls come through, link local schools, all this sort of stuff. But we went up there. Jay Leno was doing all the bit, and you know, they had every manor had a different manufacturer. Wow. And you know, we were going from Bugatti to Ferrari to Lambo to this to that, and it was a great event. You know, everyone was buzzing. But when I went off one of the days to go and have a look around some of these, you know, manors, he's like, you need to get back. The queue for the sims is out of the roof, you know. And we went there in suit and tie thinking, oh, a couple of people will go on these things, right? I turned up in this room, and they're actually in one of the tennis courts, so where they had like 5 tennis courts, and the line was out the door, and he was, you know, like, get in here, you know.
Yeah.
No, that you know, we had 2 simulators, just people queued to go on them.
Yeah, it was mad. So that really was the last piece for us outside of doing something here at the Cannon when we saw what an esports event was about. Sure. To going now and linking, kind of almost starting to link esports or simulators with racing, with cars, that we were like, okay, this is an interesting path. But no, they've been fantastic. They have a really, really good group around them down there. They've actually employed a team of people to manage the simulators. And then we've linked up local schools to them as well. And yeah, really, really, really cool. So excellent.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've watched videos, seen some things around just the experience. Yeah. You mentioned Jay Leno. I saw John Legend did a concert.
On the tour. Yeah, it was brilliant.
The cars were just, I mean, you mentioned some Bugattis and Ferraris and all of them, right? Yeah. I mean, it's hard to wow you guys, right? Yeah. But something that you saw and you're just like, that one, that's gold.
I think seeing how they use the manors to invite car collectors and car brands in. I mean, you're walking into these amazing facilities. You know, the history of the manors are amazing, And to be able to put, like when we went to the Bugatti Festival, it was the largest display of Bugattis ever. Wow. And we're turning up and the new one's sitting out front, you're like, but then you look along the entry and you've got all the eras, starting from the one that you needed a hand crank to get it going. And you think, I mean, you can't even put a price on these things.
Again,
and then you walk in the room.
It showed history,
that was pretty
didn't
cool,
it? Yeah, it showed history, and that's what people, I think, forget. Things don't just appear. There's a reason, and you know, I'm actually I love Bugattis. I think some of the early Bugattis are just pieces of art. They are, and when you see them, and like Simon said, it is just unbelievable. Yeah. And in a setting that it really is benefits for, you know, is fitting for what they do. It's fantastic. Yeah. Great place.
No, they nailed it. Year one, I mean, nailed it. You know, we were going to go back again and do it. So we'll see what happens again this year. Sure. But yeah, I think now things have evolved. It was really good. But yeah, the Bugatti one for me was pretty impressive. But just the movement of people. I mean, you know, with events, it's like you don't really know how you're going to get them to places, how they're going to see it. Because it was so stretched out, they got such a great experience of everything. And yeah, no, it fits at a good time for us right at the end of our racing season before you start wandering off into other countries. So it kind of, you know, for us with Goodwood, you'd finish Le Mans and the car's like dirty as anything, like it's grimy, like don't clean it, right? And you take it to Goodwood and it looks all dirty and people are like, man, you drive the car, like it's that dirty. They can't believe there's that much junk on it. Sure. So the same thing can happen now with Petit Le Mans with the Hors Drain because it's right after it. So I think, again, it's another family event, right? It's another opportunity to bring the families together, build memories, and position some of the branding associations we have together. So it was great, really exciting.
Love it. And so, you know, you talk about the racing sims that you've brought to the Audrain Concourse.
Yeah.
Talk more about, you know, this vision for D3 Esports.
Yeah.
And for our audience, share more about, you know, what they can expect from you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So D3 Esports, in essence, was created as another marketing arm, actually, of our racing program. And the big thing initially was, we see where esports is going. I don't know enough about it 2.5 years ago. So I thought, well, you know, we got chatting about it and we thought, well, yeah, we've been using simulation in racing for a number of years. Drivers get to learn the tracks and now you can make changes on the cars and they actually get to test before you go there. So therefore less running, better on the environment, all of that sort of stuff. So link local schools, here, have a go, you drive it, right? So, you know, it was pretty cool. But as I got more, like Ian said earlier, I buried myself in this to really understand it. And once we kind of got into the nitty gritty of that community of esports, which is largely based around the shoot 'em up games, it was a lovely crowd of people, just really humble, passionate people. You know, all in this, it was almost kind of like this underground scene that we were like, well, what is all this going on, right? Yeah. It's so techie. You know, a lot of them are coming out of school with degrees or businesses and all of this stuff going on. And you think, what a great crowd. But as you start to, like when we brought the simulator here, when this was a very different place, and seeing how many people wanted to get in it, it was great, right? So in essence, that's every week, every month, every year, it's kind of developed and evolved to us really now saying, well, if we have branding on the real cars or in real sports, they also get the opportunity to present their brand in the right light within our esports platform, which is giving them a team in our esports platform and letting their fans, their staff, their colleagues, their clients all try and win to represent their brand in this race. And obviously we've built this with Chris and the team at Mainline, which was great, because very much gamers, we're very much racers. And over the year, or 2 years, we've kind of blended in the middle to create, I think, a very exciting platform which really does marry the two. And I definitely see us every 5-week tournament series now potentially having a title partner which says, well, we're powering this because this is what we're doing and this is why. And then underneath that, you have all these teams that are all, you know, trying to win their own spot. And what we're also going to throw out there is the winner of some of the categories in our championship, the winner of the virtual championship, they actually have the opportunity to win real branding on the Transformer. Wow. So it's kind of like, why are they there? Well, they won it through what? Esports. What the heck is this all about, right? Yeah. So it's another way to kind of spread it out.
I think it's nice that, you know, we came here to the Canon originally you know, right at the beginning 2 years ago and did that. For me, that was the eye-opener to a community about how this whole game, watching people playing, and I stood and watched to hear 4 teams playing in 4 different countries, and then looking at the simulator and going away. And I think from that, here we are back here at the Cannon, 2 years later with it done. Mainline have grown from this and become a leader in the world of what they're doing, and we're doing that with them. That's about business partnerships. That's about how you develop relationships long term and not just jump in and out of agreements with people. And that is, I hope, where we are now at the beginning of this new world with esports in education.
What is next? What are you guys launching, and what exactly will that entail?
So we'll have 8 teams, 2 drivers in each, 5 weeks of different races, different track every week. And then the goal at the end of it is really just to sort of showcase that bridge between virtual and real. So we wanted to really create something that was grassroots, something that is really attainable for all. Again, back to this family, you know, you want something that wherever, the lower the barrier of entry is really the key. Absolutely. So that really led us to why we partnered with Microsoft. And you know, back in 2007, we won American Le Mans Series, which is what it was called with IMSA back then, before NASCAR bought it. And we had Forza 2 on the car, an Xbox. Wow. So that relationship's developed. And then when we launched the Transformer, Ian and I met the same guy again. And we thought, you know what? When you look at business and you look at schools and anything, Microsoft's everywhere. They have Xbox, they have Forza. Graphically, it's come on leaps and bounds. You know, if we want to be sharing data from real cars and offering it to enhance the experience virtually, what a great way. The cloud-based systems are already in the schools through Microsoft. So boom, boom, boom. Every box was getting ticked, right? Yeah. So I think as much as it's a competition-based platform and showcasing brands, it's fun, it's interactive, it's for everybody, and we'll just keep evolving and see where it goes.
Yeah, and you know, bridging that gap, you're using obviously Xbox, which has a huge install base, right? As you mentioned, you're lowering the barrier of entry. There are all levels of competition on, you know, on Xbox, right?
You've got it there, and that's really for us, as Simon said earlier. I mean, what we're seeing is the professional end of it. Everybody's buying very expensive simulators. You know, it's left out the ability of exactly what we're trying to do to go in. Whereas a lot of people say, oh, you're using a Forza platform. Well, the Forza platform was more attainable for lots of people around the world, and they can progress into the next route. So we need to see that progression, because it's education, and it's just why you go to school or college or anything else. You start at the ground roots and you work through it. So you do exactly the same thing in motorsport. You start in a go-kart or something and you work your way up. You don't just jump into Formula One or NASCAR. You have to start somewhere. And we've seen guys that couldn't even get out the pit lane in a car, you know. So there's a thing called no consequence, which is, we're back to these whole basics. How do I drive this thing safely? You know, you don't become a racing driver without respect of other people and other competitors, like in every other sport. So this has had a lot of thought put into it, and we really hope that, like Simon said, as the real world of racing goes back together and all the professionals now get back into
this just keeps growing,
their day job, our business model will be able to come back.
You know, and we were saying today as well, what's been really nice with all this that's been going on is you've got, generally mums and dads don't know so much about gaming. No. And they're going, well, Don, what are you doing in your bedroom? Well, you know, actually there's a lot going on there. And one of the things I loved about motorsport was the diversity of it. Was so many different industries all working together. And I think esports has really, you know, pumped this thing up and exposed it to just a whole nother world. And I think that then gets into, okay, I'm growing up, I'm just about to go to school. What starts to build this passion to do something, right? When you're then going through school, what classes do I enjoy? Is it because of the teachers? Is it because of where it's going to take me? As you then get into university, all right, where am I looking at a workforce? Where am I going to have a career? What's passionate? And I think if we've got these steps all along the way, we're hoping that as well with all these different companies that are presenting themselves in this esports platform. They're also at the same time looking at recruiting. They're also at the same time getting their, you know, like you look at oil and gas here. I mean, who'd have thought, hey, yeah, I want to go work on an oil rig. But if you've got a company out there like, what's this name? Oh, let me go drive in that team. Now I learn about it. You know, so you don't go through 4 years of college going, what am I going to do? When you get to college, you go there because more people know what they want to do. And I think this, again, I think is going to be beautiful, what esports can enable us to do and companies to do. It's a bit mind-blowing, actually.
Yeah.
It's cool.
One thing that I'm really, you know, excited about is gamification in education, right? And that is esports in its core, right? It is competing and bringing that competition. But, you know, STEM, esports, I see there being so much synergy. You know, as you're talking to your partners, how are they getting excited about esports?
Yeah, I think, you know, you mentioned STEM. I mean, if you sit in a boardroom or now on a Zoom conference, you know, and you sort of drop in STEM and Hasbro and esports, I mean, there's buzzwords just smacking you in the face, right? And I think, you know, you can always then get that feedback straight away, like, oh, STEM, tell me about that. Oh, esports, tell me about that, you know, because a lot of people are trying to figure out, well, how are you connecting STEM from the virtual to real world? How are you connecting esports from the virtual to real world? And when you tell them, or you know, I guess engage in them on what we're doing with it, it just goes back to, you know, you always just want to showcase something. So I think when you show people how it's working with other brands and our other partners, and these partners not being small companies, I think they're going to go, I got it, I see it. And ultimately, one of the visions we had with STEM was, how can we share all of this data? Where most teams are like, whoa, we don't want to share data because, you know, we might lose. Well, if you're worried about that, I mean, forget it, right? So I think if we can share that data and put it into schools in a well-structured way, I think we're looking pretty good. And at the same time, like you say, you know, if companies can build something fun for all ages around a STEM platform that's easily transferable, you actually can carry on your learning and make it more fun, whether you're at home or whether you're at school. I mean, I've seen it with my little one. He's not at school. He's getting done with class by midday, and he's not got anything, you know, he's getting very high scores. And it's because now he's like, right, I'll do this. I don't have all the other stuff going on, but I can now get into other things I'm really passionate about. And generally now, when I see him on the computer, I'm thinking, man, if they're driving a car that's showcasing one of our sustainable energy brands or cybersecurity, what's that? Now they get inquisitive. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, initially we couldn't get STEM accredited through D3 Esports, but it was only when we got acquired by STEMgen, a public company, that I went back again and said, hey, we're STEMgen, growing the future. Oh, we can accredit that. Same boxes got ticked, right? But it was just because they were looking at esports early on as, oh, it takes kids away from learning. Now it can see how it does.
Definitely. Ian, you know, we talk about your tenure in racing, and, you know, back thinking to 1971, a young engineer going into this, was it ever a possibility to think of racing in a virtual race? Was that like, how would that even manifest over time?
Well, I think like a lot of people that have done, you know, similar things to me in their life, and you know, when you consider, and it's always, I know I talked to Simon about it, when there was no concept of a computer or a phone or a mobile phone,
sure,
and you worked away on either making things or somebody sitting on a drawing board drawing, you know, which is how I started as well, you know, learning technical drawing. I went to college to learn technical drawing, you know, so you had everything. I always remember my father giving me a set of drawing equipment, you know, with optical legs and everything else. I still have that box in a black case, and, you know, and I would say that's like somebody giving you a mobile phone. And it still blows me away when I look at what the tools that we have to do what we're doing. I mean, it is unbelievable. So yeah, I don't think you could have had any concept at that period of time. But then I'm sure the Wright brothers, when they built a plane for the first time, ever thought in 100 years' time we're going to be where we are today.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing with the world. The world just has to respect all of these milestones. And what's gone on now, I think, is out of a disaster, there's going to be some great opportunities. And
just
it really made
one
people
of the
think
one of the
differently.
big times that reminded me when we had a car like, say, the Andretti Formula One car, right? And when I was trying to think, how do I present this to my father and say, hey, virtual racing, right? You know, when he's like, you know, and but we put it up there and said, here, drive that. And it was quite emotional, wasn't it? You know, when you first were like...
it is, and I think it's interesting that Mario at 80 went on a simulator up against a lot of the Indy guys, and you know, I can only say a sportsman like him who are multi-talented, multitask. You know, his son runs the Andretti business, and you know, there is a sort of a dynasty going on there. And but you look at technology. You know, I was involved with Ford's projects out of Detroit for about 7 years, and that was full innovation, as we were mentioning earlier on, and early carbon fiber before we're talking about hemp. You know, how those technologies were used, and we worked a little bit with NASA at the time through Ford on ceramics and materials that were then when I watched the first person go to the moon.
Which now you can experience all those different materials virtually.
You just have to think what you're doing. You know, it doesn't interest some people. You know, some people, well, you know, that I don't care about all that stuff. You know, to me, it's still fascinating that.
It's like when you use the VR the first time.
And so, for our audience out there, where can they find more information on, you know, Dawson Racing and also the D3 esports stuff?
Absolutely. So Dawson Racing, all one word.com, is going to be the home of the reel. There'll be links on there with the esports for, you know, to go to the esports and, you know, how you can interact with the team. And then with Mainline, they're creating a tournament server for it. So it'll be, I believe it'd be D3 Esports.mainline.gg. You can drop an email to info@d3esports.com. We've started to build up quite a big database of interested gamers or sim racers just looking to be positioned, and some of those we will position.
Ian, Simon, thank you guys so much for being with us today. Really enjoyed, you know, learning more about the business of racing, learning more about, you know, your history, your pedigree. Most importantly, excited about what you guys are launching. So we're excited. Thanks for checking us out. We'll catch you next time. Hey there, thanks for checking out the Closers Coffee YouTube channel. Make sure to follow us for all the latest Closers content. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more. We can't wait to catch you next time.